Well, because I think that that's a real, I mean, that becomes an important issue. And, of course, with just two patterns, you might not be able to get around it. And number two, though, this is one of those situations where if somebody's talking about a belief and you're trying to change the belief and there's really an identity issue, that's, I mean, a so-called hidden agenda, if you will, then that can be real important to know about. And that's why I was saying it'd be good to have, getting that kind of example so you can go, oh, now I recognize what's going on there. Because if you're role-playing a client, what kind of thing was this, is it possible to say what kind of belief did the client start with? Or?
I have been persecuted in past lifetimes, and that's why things are happening to me where they are now, why I'm not accepted.
Okay, so because of things happening in past lifetimes, because I was persecuted in past lifetimes, that's why I'm not being accepted now. Okay, so you could go to consequence and say, so then it's very important, the way that you are able to resolve those now will determine what's going to happen in your next lifetime. How would you like that to be? So, by the way, one other piece of context, of course, is I can take things and change around linguistically. Pat, where were you going with this person? What are they just is it just a conversation, or is this a person that, so it's his personal friend? Okay, where would you like to, in terms of doing the role play, I mean, from your point of view, where would you like to end up with the person? Just understanding it, or trying to lead them into a different, like, does it get in their way?
I feel that the persecution is getting in the way.
Okay. Okay, so they're saying, but the persecution isn't happening now, it happened in the...
Oh, yes, it's happening.
Oh, so persecution. Okay, so let's come back in, or we'll go back in. Well, is it persecution, or is it being tested for your next lifetime?
Well, I have to, karmically, I have to work through the persecution and the pain of having been raped and being stabbed in the back, and I know that what my lack of acceptance here and the persecution still exists.
Well, is it lack of acceptance, or is it, again, is it other people that aren't accepting you into the groups? By the way, let's also take a step back, because this is a really interesting one, which is why I think getting the examples are good. Here you have, just like the paranoid person that I was demonstrating, here you have an individual who is it's like a self-fulfilling loop. You have a belief that it's hard for other people to accept, so you're going to automatically have evidence to that. And here's a person saying, well, people don't accept me. They're not accepting my belief. So you try to challenge the belief, and what you're doing is you're falling right into that. Now this is also, I kind of like to use it as an opportunity to introduce another level of, another one of these patterns. And it's called a meta frame. And a meta frame, the interesting thing about a meta frame is that it is a belief that relates to your ongoing communication with the person. So what that means is, it's not just a belief, it's a belief that is about, it also includes what you're doing right here. So for me, I'm not just talking about you being accepted by other people. Whatever I do is an example of this belief as well. For instance, let's say somebody goes, well, since you do NLP, you're manipulating me. I mean, so, and you say, well, no, I wouldn't want to manipulate you. Well, of course you're going to say that you wouldn't want to manipulate me. That's a way of doing it. I mean, I've actually had people say, I feel so good, it makes me not trust it because, so, you're kind of saying, well, how do since I'm underneath this belief, how do I know you're not just pacing me? I feel like you're so genuine, it really scares me that people could act that way, because it might just be an act. I might really be getting fooled. The more sure I feel, the more I worry about that I'm just getting fooled by this. So these are the kind of statements that, like the paranoid statement, I want you to help me, but I don't trust you because you might be out to get me, or in this case, you might not be accepting me. And that's why I was saying that this is a good example of a meta frame because it relates to the ongoing context as well. And that's why you kind of have to put a metaframe on top of that as well. Where, you know, and this would be an interesting thing to say, how could you outframe that frame? And I think that's, before you want to start redefining or going to consequences, because you can see that if I start redefining or going to a consequence, that will be perceived as unacceptance, which is why you're getting the resistance. And I think in this kind of a situation, the resistance is not coming from the belief or changing the belief. The resistance is about you and me right here, right now. What do I need to do to show you that I'm not out to get you or to challenge your belief or to not accept you? You know, so what I'd want to do is to kind of try and find a frame that could go around that, which is to say, well, you know, I mean, it could be something like, well, as a friend, I'm really concerned with this because maybe, I mean, I don't know how I fit into the acceptance or not, because I certainly would accept. I find that it's really easy for me to accept people, although because I'm limited in my own models of the world, it's not always easy for me to directly be able to pick up that model of the world. And then I might ask her, you know, what she thinks about that. I mean, because I certainly, because if she's a friend of mine, it's a really interesting thing to me, and I really am concerned about the feelings that she has. And because it's an interesting model of the world, and I would want to communicate with her about that. So what I would try to do, and again, I'd have to see how she responds, is set a frame where I validate acceptance, identity level, us being friends, and then push down confusion, not unacceptance. Saying I'm not accepting your belief, I'm just confused by it. And I think a number of you were recognizing that a lot of times there begins to become an intention issue involved in this. My intention in doing this role play and not letting you win is because I'm trying to control it. I'm going to always find something that won't work simply because that is my purpose. My purpose is to be right. And sometimes that just has to be accepted. In other words, if you miss that, if you let that be the metaframe and you don't go above it, and this is where meta-commenting becomes important. The way I get out of those kind of double binds is just to pull out of the situation and say, wait a minute, this content we're talking about doesn't seem to me to be the issue. It seems to me like you have a real need to be in charge of what's going on here, and I don't want to challenge that.
This person believes that they're really brighter than the average, and therefore...
That's right. So if they give in, you can imagine then if... Yeah. Yeah. So then that's what you want to do, though, is to go above that. I won't call the person on that if there's something that's being hidden there. And this is, by the way, where also another outcome, which is another sleight of mouth pattern, becomes important. For instance, I was once in a group where people were trying to elicit a decision strategy from a woman who didn't believe she could make good decisions. And so they were trying to have her get an example where they could get a good decision so they could help her change her decisions. And she said, well, I've never made a good decision. I said, well, did you ever buy a car? Yeah, but it was a lemon. Well, did you ever get rid of it? I mean, did you decide to get rid of it? Oh, yeah, I had to get rid of it. Well, wasn't that a good decision? Well, no, that wasn't a decision. I mean, that was just paying for my mistake. So any good decision, she recategorized as something else. So when I came in, I first put a metaframe where I said, well, the first thing I wonder about, if your decision strategy is so bad, how do we know that it's a good decision to change it, if you've decided that it's not good? And then when